So our good friend Jose Vega, the anti-war Jose Vega, interrupted the warmonger, the queen of all warmongers, Hillary Clinton. Boy, she's a bloodthirsty maniac.
Jose Vega is crazy for this.
And what do you mean?
For interrupting Hillary Clinton? Like he's like.
You mean like you're afraid that
I don't even want to say what I'm thinking.
She's going to put a hit out on him?
Well, let's see how embarrassed she is, because I don't think you can just get away with stuff like that.
So he says, my friends Robert Castle of the Schiller Institute confronted the warmongering, and Simon Miller confronted the warmongering queen herself, Hillary Clinton. Robert begins by calling out her hypocrisy and clearly stating her entire talk is just warmonger. Part 2 coming soon.
Already better than Jon Stewart.
Yes. Okay.
And help be struck by the hypocrisy of this.
Two more people
I can't.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
And help be struck by the hypocrisy of this.
Two more people
I
to
can't.
hear from.
I'm sorry.
You have a chance. Well, I'm not sorry. Sit down.
I know you're not sorry. That's the point. The hypocrisy of this speech. The hypocrisy of the fact that what do you have? Can you please make a statement about President Joe Biden's speech? This is a clearly warmongering speech. President Joe Biden is calling for $100 billion of funding for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and we're supposed to just bundle these together and pretend like we're going to rush to World War III, and we're all just going to let Hillary Rodham Clinton sit here. Okay.
I'm sorry. You know,
yes.
This is not. This is not.
No,
the way
I thought you said she wasn't sorry.
I'm sorry.
If you want to have a conversation.
Well, he mentioned those things she did.
You can sit here. Okay, right. You're gonna wait for me, right? Please, I do not believe you.
Listen to you, and I will respond.
I do not believe you. Respectfully, I do not believe you. And the fact of the matter is that the American people's voice are what need to be heard.
Yeah,
because our president is not speaking for the American people, and neither are you.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion.
But then sit down. We've heard your opinion. Thank you very much.
She's gonna wait for him.
I'm not gonna sit down. I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna stop intervening. I'm gonna wait here. I'm gonna exercise my free speech until
it's
I'm
not free speech when you are disrupting.
Yes, it
everybody
is.
else's
It is
opportunity
free
to
speech.
What?
This is free speech, everyone. This is free speech. That is not free speech. This is people constructing narratives that are openly hypocritical. I'm sorry. The incredible hypocrisy. You tell me John Foster Dulles went with Eleanor Roosevelt to bring this Declaration of the Rights of Man? John Foster Dulles was involved with the CIA.
Oh yeah, well, you're brilliant in your historical.
Yes, thank you. And the Pinochet regime.
They're listening to him.
Please inform me about the United States involvement in these historical things.
We're going to move on.
Miss Clinton, will you denounce Joe Biden? Will you denounce Joe Biden's speech?
Will you yelling about it? So Frank, I want to turn to you because. You are from Uganda.
What I want to hear is for Hillary Rodham Clinton to denounce President Joe Biden's warmongering speech, trying to push us to World War III. Do you understand?
Oh, please! Please!
It's not about. It's not football. This isn't football. It's not Team America.
Well, I'm sorry, but. Some of us are on Team
I thought you weren't sorry.
Yes, that's me.
Please sit down. You're going to have to do something. You can't take over the event. You have to stop right now. You have to stop.
Or what? I'm going to exercise my
interrupting your event.
On this stage has risked their life, their income, their reputation, their careers, and what have you done?
I need you to, sir. You have to listen to me.
Against you any day of the year.
I'll respond. What I have done is I have asked Hillary Rodham Clinton to denounce the president's openly warmongering, suicidal, idiotic speech.
And
that's what I've asked. That's what I've done.
So that's the end of our conversation, but I'll still meet you outside. But you're done.
I told you, dude. She goes, I will meet you outside. She's gonna meet him.
Okay.
Okay. Did you see when he was saying? Here's what's interesting.
But there's the problem with this is all the people in that room are a bunch of fucking propagandized assholes, and they don't know it. And if they do know it, they don't give a shit. So that's it. She's got
to that.
Who the hell would go to
Besides
listen?
him and people that want to see it.
That's right.
Pro Hillary people.
Yeah.
Okay, but while he was saying his thing, did you hear when she starts going, okay, this guy's from Uganda.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why is she going to Uganda? He's LGBTQ. These are some, Uganda is not.
Yes, they're not down with the
Let's get back to a real important topic right now. More important than World War III, which I don't think is going to help the gay situation in Uganda.
Please.
Oh, please. We're talking about something that concerns America right now.
Wow. Well, great job.
Yeah, no shit.
What was that? That is Simon Miller. Simon Miller. I don't know who that is, but great job, Simon Miller. And thanks for Jose Vega for sending. I bet you Jose was on the camera.
I would have got upset too, like him, because I'm definitely gonna die for this.
What we need is like 20 people. We need like 20 people to go to one of those.
Yeah.
So if I wasn't sick, I would have been there.
I'm not going to Hillary thing.
How do they not know that this is going to happen, and how do they not have security? They had as good as security as Israel did on October 7th. That was unbelievable. How did they let that happen?
They'll have better security now.
What's that?
I have a feeling she'll have better security now.
I have a feeling too,
because the points he was
sounds
making,
like such a whatever when she said, "And shut up and sit down."
Well, she goes,
"You're done."
Yeah, she goes, "Not sorry." She goes, "Well, I'm sorry," which is very subtle psychological tell to me for her to go from not sorry to sorry after he says the things. Then people were listening to him.
Yes.
She had to switch it to Uganda LGBTQ.
Yep.
To hit that Manchurian candidate word in their head to get them back to what they're doing.
Wow, that was nice work. What were you searching for when you discovered the benefits of CBD? What was your personal? So I was looking for help with I had a skin rash.
And did it help that?
It super duper. In fact, I was using Western medicine stuff, and it was making it worse. It was like steroids and stuff, which worked initially, and then boom, it came back harder and worse. Right? What did you hear about Dave Chappelle? Did you hear this?
He said something about, the thing in Palestine that they're doing right now. And somebody was like, F you. He goes, no, you shut up. And $1 billion of our dollar. He made a pretty good argument, actually. And it wasn't some overwhelming, they all hated him. It was somebody was mad because he brought up
Israel, Palestine, what's happening. Someone got mad.
Yeah.
He told him to shut up.
Yeah, they had
they had a little back and forth. And then they walked out of his show.
Yeah, part of the crowd was yelling "Free Palestine," apparently. Also,
really?
Yeah. So it was
they're splitting Dave Chappelle's audience.
His crowd formed 2 states.
So I just want. So this was the joke. So this special, he got in trouble for his trans jokes, but I remember, man, that's a badass looking suit too. He always looks good on stage, and but here he is. What now? Remember this joke? I can't believe he didn't get canceled for this. Was the joke I thought as I'm watching this with Steph, and I'm like, what the F? He can't. They're airing this on Netflix. Yeah. Watch this. This is what I'm talking about.
And it made me think of an idea for a movie. It sounds dumb, but hear me out.
Turn it up a little more.
In my movie idea, we find out that these aliens are originally from Earth. That they're from an ancient civilization that achieved interstellar travel and left the Earth thousands of years ago. Some other planet they go to and things go terrible for them and the other planet. So they come back to Earth, decide that they want to claim the Earth for their very own. It's a pretty good plot line, huh? I call it Space Jews. Tactics that was so cruel, even white slave owners were like, yo, my man. He's a wild dude, but he did it just because that's what successful people did at the time, and he just wanted to be down. What a fucking tragedy. How can a person that went through slavery perpetrate the same evil on a person that looks just like him? It's mind-blowing. And shockingly, they're making a movie about it. Ironically, it's called Space Jews.
How did he get?
Well, when did this come out? This is close to BLM. Look, close to when BLM started, who said we support Hamas up front, people that are shocked. That's when Jews are also another kind of white people. We're close to the BLM times in America. You're just another kind of white, okay? Now, as time has gone, and nobody's thinking about Gaza. Everybody forgot about that blockade the whole time all this stuff was going on with trans or whatever. And now that this is flaring up again after all these years of being mad about the trans jokes and not this joke, now this is flaring up again. So now the alliance that was not really firm other than mass corporate promotion of it is crumbling because a bunch of BLM and all the people of all those titles and that and Israel and Palestine, that doesn't really go together. And now it's coming out.
Yeah, so that's so.
And so now that might, like I said,
so BLM is on the side of Palestine.
They always were.
And so all those people, I'm talking about Hollywood celebrities and what have you, who are on the side of BLM, are now they're on the side of Israel, and so now it's really
the ones that are going to make it are
the ones who are Go
ones
ahead, Craig. You want to say something?
No, I just laughing.
Okay.
About that
So
that's what your woke is really Hollywood, the most propaganda, and this is breaking all. This is like during a strike.
Yeah.
All like where they tell them not to wear Halloween costumes or whatever for the strike. All kinds of nonsense.
Jeez.
So it's funny the nonsense that regular people have noticed for a long time is now making its way up to the different bubbles. Like it's spread to all the islands of reality. And that's what the exciting part is. You know, that in the upcoming we're going to blow up, but it is fun to watch this part of it where all those things you knew were ridiculous for these people act like they had a coalition watching that split apart.
Wow. This is, I mean, I still can't get over this joke. That is
in America, Jews are white people unless they're in trouble. If you're like when Sarah's like, "Oh, hey, I didn't know what I said about Joyanne Reed," like she try to go back to But even Whoopi Goldberg, remember, Whoopi Goldberg stuck with her comments that the Holocaust is white on white crime. She stuck with that going on another show to clarify. She stuck with. She was like that Israeli ambassador talking about doing Dresden crimes. The way she stuck with that. So this stuff's splitting up now. Now you see the.
So this is the end of woke, and the reason why he was able to get away with that joke. Your theory is that. Because
white
he's making fun of white people.
Yes.
White people are bad, and Jews were white people, according to in that era
in America. And also, trans was way more important than this at the time, if you recall. That was like there was nothing more important in the entire world. Than trans issues. So, I mean, it really is like magic to do one joke that can make people upset while they're upset about this other joke.
He also did the Saturday Night Live thing too, Kurt, as well. What? When he went after this, he did the Saturday Night Live thing where he went after Trump a little bit, kind of. Yeah, and that was kind of like when we saw that, it was like, okay, he's kind of caressing back the mainstream media now and all those executives. And
Dave says what he thinks.
I think that I didn't see the whole his whole Saturday Night Live set, but I did see the part where he said that Trump was an honest liar, which made me, pull my hair out because I've been doing a version of that joke for over a year before he did it on Saturday Night Live. And now people are going to think that I'm piggybacking off his ideas when it was parallel construction.
Oh, I would just drop it.
And I'm not dropping that.
She's going to be president again, it looks like. So, so maybe it'll kick in.
But Chappelle, that's what I remember about him doing on Saturday Night Live was he did. So you're saying, but Craig, you're saying he went after Trump on Saturday Night Live?
A little bit. I mean, for me, I kind of felt when we saw that was like him retracting a little bit. Like, well, I'll go back to behaving somewhat. I won't go craziness to
think
the
it
walls.
was.
I felt that way when I watched the whole thing.
I thought it was ballsy of him
Yeah.
to say that Trump was an honest liar.
Chappelle says what he wants. I mean, look, if you ditch unlike
50
Jon Stewart,
Yeah.
Chappelle had a $50 million contract and said, sayonara, I'm going
Sayonara.
to South Africa because I just don't like the vibe of this. And I understand. I didn't get it at the time.
And I didn't realize that when he walked away from that contract that they told him that, we'll make you look like a mental case before you
They
even.
did.
And they did.
Yeah, and
I thought he was a mental case for a couple of minutes.
Before I understood how the business works.
Before I understood what was happening.
Yeah, Jon Stewart probably just realized that he wasn't crazy just now. With his $50 million.
You mean he was after he went on Colbert and did the lab leak joke?
No, after he got punked into doing that interview he didn't want to do with Condi and Hillary instead of running to Africa like a real man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, man. You can't have heroes in this world. You can't have heroes.
Well, you just don't worship him as a god. That's my advice to everyone.
Yeah. You can look up to people, but just know they're flawed. Everybody has huge flaws, right? Great men have great flaws.
I don't even care if you're great. If you did a thing I like that thing you did.
Yeah.
If you do something that I hate or why does everybody need to have their box of the good and bad people?
Cornel West speaks very, very highly of you. You are a Green Party member.
Yep.
Do you agree with Cornel West's recent decision to not seek the Green Party nomination?
I do not. I was very, very disappointed. I thought it could have been huge politically for the country, for the Green Party, for the left in general, for him. But for whatever reason, I get the feeling he hadn't really thought it through, and it was something he wasn't really ready to do. And so I was extremely disappointed. The Democrats, by the way, in New York State, have gotten the Greens off the ballot. We don't have a ballot line anymore. Andrew Cuomo, one of his parting gifts, they raised the threshold for getting nominating petition signatures, and it's this huge number that we can't reach. And absent someone even with a big name person like West, it still would have been hard, but it gave us some possibility. All the issues that the Green Party stands for, that people want and agree with. There was something about having this well-known person that there were people I was surprised who said, I would vote for Cornel West. I was kind of pleasantly surprised. And now we're back to square one. Who would that be? The people whose names have been mentioned are people I don't want. I don't want to spend time talking about people I don't want.
No, sure.
But so we're back to square one, scrambling, and New York is not alone. Other states have gotten the Greens off the ballot. So trying to the biggest of the, we say third parties as if there's only three, but the biggest non-duopoly party that had the grassroots support and the ability to get people on the ballot. Now it's like, who's going to run? Who should that be? And I think West, and I appreciate his, he gave me a blurb for my book, which is something everybody wanted, right? Cornel West blurb for your book. And he's a very kind person. He's very generous with his time. I think he's really a grassroots person, and he'll turn up in places you wouldn't expect, the, small, local groups giving support for some issue. And I respect him for that, but I wish he had either thought it through before he did it or had just stayed in and worked, the bumps of something new. And it was new for him. And I suspect that.
Welcome to another episode of Straight Out of Politics. Today, I'm your host, CJ. That stands for Compton J. J in real life. Confirming. It feels good to take a stance on something and be one of the only voices if not the only mid-sized voice, because no one large-sized voice was saying what I was saying at the time, and that this was a terrible decision. I immediately jumped off the Cornel West campaign, even when he got Peter Dow. And it's become a custom that RBN goes out on the limb with a critique that is far ahead of mainstream left people. And then we get a lot of incoming fire. It happened with Marianne Williamson. Before we knew she was even running, we were putting out shit about her, of them talking about her running. And we took a lot of incoming. And turns out we was exactly correct. And it's been, several things. So it feels good to hear people who are respected in this space to concur with RBN, and in this particular case, what I was saying. Because we had Shama Sawant come out and speak on it. We had Ajamu Baraka come out and speak on it on a show with Nick and I. And now you see Margaret Kimberly. I can't think for RBN, I can't think of any other three people we would associate our politics and our strategy with, but those three people. So for me, this is like, in some sort of adventure movie where you got to place three items in order for this force to open up, this wall to open up and all this amazing stuff come out. This is the last jewel for me. Had Shama Sawant come out, had Ajamu Baraka come out, and now you see Margaret Kimberly concurring with all of us have said. Just saying. And we want, I would hope there would be a day where RBN or people like us, a working class sort of marginalized group apparatus, can say something without having degrees and all of these accolades attached to us, and people can just go off what we say without these sort of giants in our space having to confirm what we said, and then everybody is cool now with what RBN's critique or analysis was. Yes, this is a good example. But if it's fire, earth, air, water, I got to think of another person because we've got three. Yeah, and another thing she said that I want to speak on before I go back to the video. When her analysis, I get the feeling that he didn't really fully think this through. That's something else that RBN has been saying. Don't get the feeling that, I mean, in all of the decisions we can see in the events that have happened in chronological order that he obviously did not think this through. Starting with the People's Party was the red flag for that. And we said that at the time. But getting onto the Green Party, we thought he finally righted his ship. And then you jump off. It'd be like a hitchhiker who needs to go from New York to California, and you find somebody in New York hitchhiking that's nice and is happen to be driving to California. The hitchhiking part is you being the People's Party. Then you put your thumb out, then the Green Party picks you up. Before you get to the destination, you in New York City, you start getting scared about the ride. Like, oh damn, we going all the way to California on this shit. So you say, oh no, let me get out here in Philadelphia. So let's continue with the video here, and so we can get to the main event, which is war with Iran. We're gonna dive into that topic. It's a lot of receipts to go through.
That, for a person, he's not a young man, for someone of his age, to have this new experience of a political campaign. I mean, I can't speak for him, but it was personally disappointing, and I think it's a lost opportunity for left politics and for Black politics too.
I agree with everything you just said, but when you say he didn't think it through, like, do you mean running with the Greens, or do you mean running for president in general, or a little bit of both?
I think running in general. I suspect, and I have not talked to him, but I've heard some things that this, you have to have a kind of discipline, and you're the boss, but you also have to listen to other people who've run a campaign before. And I think that was hard for him to do, and it would have meant a lot of travel.
What did Nick say? Just recently, Nick said something along this lines. Clearly, Cornel West has a hard time listening to people. He clearly has a bone in him that could possibly be having a little uppity attitude or understanding. I'm a Harvard, Princeton professor, and you're giving me advice? That sort of thing. So again, this is incredible for me to hear who RBN, and we've said this many times, and Margaret Kimberly is the guest we've had on our show the most of any person on our show. She has been on here the most frequently, on our network, I should say. This is great to hear her say lots of the same things that we have been saying.
It would have meant,
Let me rewind it just a little bit so she can complete her thought here. I'll go back 20. I think that was 20 seconds. I hope I didn't click it wrong.
Discipline, and you're the boss, but you also have to listen to other people who've run a campaign before. And I think that was hard for him to do, and it would have meant a lot of travel. It would have meant so if he said something, tweeted something years ago that's not in keeping with the Green Party, just as an example, now you've got to explain yourself. It's like, well, did you not agree with that then? Or do you know this is not something Greens can go with now? So there were some complications like that. And
she's being nice by calling it complication. This is called accountability. So that bullshit accountability that he tried to masquerade to us as coming on these shows, what does that do if you don't follow through with what the people on the ground, the people shows you're going on? What does that do if you don't align yourself with what the people is telling you should be doing? You get what I'm saying? In other words, what's the use in calling a meeting and asking for opinions if you're going to take everybody's opinions and then put them in the trash when the meeting's over? What is the purpose in that?
So if he said something, tweeted something years ago that's not in keeping with the Green Party, just as an example, now you've got to explain yourself. It's like, well, did you not agree with that then? Or do you know this is not something Greens can go with now? So there were some complications like that. And I think
again, now that I hear that again. So you remember how in interviews, I think it was it the Savvy interview? Some subsequent interview after making an announcement going independent, he always can been saying, yeah, I'm not going to get into the details. And it was Nick and I, when we were covering that segment, I said, the reason he doesn't want to get into the details because he knows if people knew the details, they will be even more upset about this decision. And if what Margaret Kimberly is saying right now about some of the things he didn't want to do, like this, having accountability, yes, this makes you look worse. This makes it look worse that he left the Green Party. So terrible. But let's listen to some more to Margaret and we'll get to the main story here.
I think it was something he had not considered. The reality of a presidential or any political campaign is quite different. If you have a campaign manager, the candidate is the boss, but the campaign manager gets to tell you what to. That's part of their job. Do this, don't do that. Talk to this one, don't talk to that one. We need to go here, but not there, and this is why. And I suspect he's a person who's been his own boss, as an academic and an author, and it must have been hard for him to.
She's nicing it up right here for me, in my opinion.
Do these things that were very, very different from what he had done before. So
why do you think he decided to run independent as opposed to running as a Green? Like, why do you think he concluded that would be easier?
He did not.
I hate to say this, but because it's not really a campaign. How's he going to get on the ballot? How are you going to get on the ballot without a party behind you? The only person I can remember was Ross Perot, but he was a billionaire.
Right.
So I hadn't planned on listening to all of this because I had screened 4 minutes of this. I just wanted to get the gist. This is even better than I thought. Because this is exactly what we said. This is him deciding to say, and I think due dissidence, the phrase they say, I'm throwing in the towel here. But I'm going to continue so it appears that I'm keeping the promise to the people who I told I'm going to stay in this to the end. I'm just going to be somewhere in the background, not really trying.
So is this really a campaign? Is it just a write-in thing? What is it now?
She's saying the exact same thing.
Does he still want to do this at all? So I don't know if he may have changed his mind and said, I didn't know what this was going to be like. And and even the Green Party has its rules. He wasn't being handed the nomination. He had to campaign for the nomination. He had to travel around the country and meet people and make the case. I think I can't think of anybody who, absent something unexpected, who would have gotten the Green Party nomination and not him. But I think, once the reality of it, he saw the reality of having this campaign and the kind of work involved. I think that's why he did it. And, so what is it to run as an independent if you don't have that apparatus behind you?
No, I mean,
we're gonna do part 2 of analyzing this. I do want to save part 2 with Nick, so we're gonna do that on Friday. Tomorrow I'm gonna be on with Lee Camp, so I don't think I'm gonna do my show. It's right around the time, and I just don't want to make sure nothing happens because I have to be very precise with timing. So I'm likely just not to do my show. And every day my show is up in the air, so it's not like I would have known anyway. But I'm on with Lee Camp on Lee Camp show tomorrow. So on Friday, I'm gonna say we're gonna cover this tomorrow. I'm sorry, Lee Camp tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern is where I'm gonna be on with Lee Camp. 3:30 Eastern on Lee Camp show. So Friday, we're going to have Nick and CJ, and I want to make sure we save some time to do part 2 of this. And here, this is related to the subject, so I'll throw it up. From John, thank you for the super chat. Still no word from Chris Hedges. I think Chris Hedges has chimed in that he's fine with the decision or something to that effect. That's not a direct quote, but I'm just remembering from what I remember he said. He's like, it wasn't like he was against it. I know that for sure, because I would have did a segment or something like that, or there'd been some kind of statement. So the people that were against it, you saw when immediately it was announced, and Jill Stein dropped a long message with her thoughts, and it was her and Ajamu Baraka thoughts. So I already knew those two wasn't down with it. So just a lot of good information, a lot of confirming what we've already said and thought and analysis that we had here on RBN about the decision by Dr. Cornell West. It is good to hear this from Margaret Kimberly. So let's move on, though, to the next topic. And let me make sure Rockfin is running, because I started kind of abruptly. I wanted to start at 1, but just, household stuff is going on this morning. I'm not really a morning person, and now that the little one is in preschool, having to get up really early. So, but anyway, we're at 132 likes. So if you hit that like button, our goal is 300. And we're at 132. The goal is 300. Thank you for those that have hit that like button already. And if you're here and you haven't hit that like button, please hit it so you can get us to 300. We've had over 700 people come through at some point and watch. So 718 to be exact. So thank you to those 718 people who have made their way through to watch us at some point. Maybe you dropped out. You're not on break anymore. You dropped out, but all right. So the goal is 300. Hit that like button. Also, there's one other thing I wanted to shout out. I don't have it ready, which is the fundraiser. JB's fun. Oh yeah, it is. He does have it here. Oh no, it's not here. So anyway, I don't see it here. Maybe it's because he loaded it. I don't see his graphic here. Anyway, I'll get prepared for another break in a segment just to shout out his fundraiser. But join our Substack if you want to know when we go live. If you want to know when we drop clips, if you want all the clips from a particular day sent to you, because that's how we send. We send one email with all of the clips. I think there are 5 or 6 clips. So when you get the email, you'll see like 5 clips. You can watch them from your email, or if you want to watch them on YouTube, you click on the YouTube icon there to get there. But all of that starts with you joining our Substack, and that's scrolling there at the bottom. Now, let's get into the main topic. And I guess we'll start here. And there's a lot to cover, but I'm just going to give it the overarching title of War with Iran. And I'll give a little background here and there. But one of the main videos we're going to be starting with is the interview with what's his name? Tucker Carlson and Colonel Douglas Macgregor. So we're going to be starting with that interview, and I'm bringing it up here. Now, let's go to bookmarks. And I know there's going to be a lot of different clips. I'm talking to Aaron now. Aaron, there's going to probably be a lot of different clips, even though it still says War with Iran, because I'll be with receipts and everything, not changing topics, but adding here and there. But first, we're going to be starting with part of this. Now, be breaking this up. Oops, I have to share it yet. I'm going to be breaking this up. Wow. Israel is a terrorist state. That's Nick. All right, so let's go. All right, so now that I saw that, let's go to the main event. This is why, like, when my time slot, there's a lot of stuff that is still breaking. This is why sometimes when I have time at the end of the show, I'll go through my feed at the end of the show just to see if anything broke that I can just mention while I'm still live, because the time slot is so early in the day, there is still a lot of news that is breaking. But again, we're gonna start here with this interview. And we can start here, Aaron, for your editing sake. War with Ukraine is looking like it's imminent, and we're gonna start this stream with this interview that Tucker Carlson did with Colonel Douglas Macgregor. And there's a lot of other receipts that I have. One with Scott Ritter on another podcast. Then I'm going to show a couple of like more historical videos 2-3 years ago, just kind of to give you the background of why so much hatred between Iran and Israel. I'm sorry, between Iran and the U.S. and it has to do with Israel. Maybe that's why I had that Freudian slip there. But let's start here with this. I'll stop and start. I'll probably get to about a third of it before I start a show. Pause this interview and then get to some receipts and then come back to this interview. But let's start here.
We seem to be heading to war with Iran. Certainly, the Biden administration is pushing us in that direction. What's new and interesting and ominous is that very few Republicans, the opposition party, are pushing back. Instead, some of the party's leaders are encouraging it. Here, for example, is Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina from last weekend on NBC.
You said this week that the only way to keep the war from escalating is to hold Iran accountable, part of what you're talking about now, and that it might mean bombing their oil refineries. Yeah. Have you had any discussions with the Biden administration about this?
A bit. Here's my message. If Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran, launches a massive attack on Israel, I will consider that a threat to the state of Israel, existential in nature. I will introduce a resolution in the United States Senate to allow military action by the United States in conjunction with Israel to knock Iran out of the oil business.
Now, let me pause here. Because for those of you that may not be so engaged with foreign politics, especially foreign politics about with Iran, so much, Iran entering this, if you're a Zionist, really make it a possibility that Israel as a state will no longer exist. The colonial project, the colonial settler project that we know as Israel, there is a possibility if Iran and their allies and the people, if other allies join, Turkey and other people join, there is a real possibility that the end result at the end of all the fighting that is the destruction of the state of Israel. So that's why there's a lot of hand wringing, in particular from more conservative people about Iran. They want them to go harder at Iran. But we'll get into more of that as the discussion goes on. There is a lot to get into. So let me rewind it a little bit and play it some more.
Of what you're talking about now, and that it might mean bombing their oil refineries.
Yeah.
Have you had any discussions with the Biden administration about this?
A bit. Here's my message. If Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran, launches a massive attack on Israel, I will consider that a threat to the state of Israel, existential in nature. I will introduce a resolution in the United States Senate to allow military action by the United States in conjunction with Israel to knock Iran out of the oil business. Iran, if you escalate this war, we're coming for you.
Are you effectively poised to declare war on Iran? That's very strong language.
I am poised to use military force to destroy the source of funding for Hamas and Hezbollah.
That's Lindsey Graham. A few others in the Republican Party will be that open about their intentions, but very few disagree with him. Certainly not in private. They agree. So what would war with Iran mean? Well, it's hard to know because virtually no one who's talking about it in public is operating from a deep interest in America's interest. Is this good for us or is it not? Former Colonel Douglas Macgregor is the CEO of Our Country, Our Choice, and one of the first people we turn to for analysis of events like this because he is interested in what happens to the United States. He joins us now. Doug, thank you for coming on. Do you think that we are moving toward war with Iran?
Yes, I do. And it looks like the chosen destination is indeed Armageddon. There doesn't seem to be any real appreciation for the implications for us and frankly, for Europe and the world, as well as the Middle East, of such action. Take for an example, just on the economic side, about 20% of the world's oil passes through the Straits of Hormuz every month. Probably 25% of liquefied natural gas. And you're talking about shutting down 2 to 3 million barrels a day of oil from Iran. This entire region is.
How would that affect us here? Shutting down that amount of oil. How would that affect us? Now, that's a good thing for, well, let me back up. How would that affect us? How would that affect your gas prices? Now, this shutting down this amount of oil meant that this was better for the economy. That would be great, but the oil will still be extracted. It just would not be coming to us. So again, these are people in high places with deep pockets making decisions that will be catastrophic to us, playing these war games like it's a battleship game. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did I got that spelling directly from Tucker Carlson. It's not spelled with an A. Is it spelled 2 C's? Or maybe, where did I see that? Somebody. Did I spell this wrong? Anybody can tell me. But anyway, let's continue. I'll look it up myself. Never mind. I'll look it up myself. Let me play the video. Let's get back to the discussion as he talks more about Iran.
Involved in the war. This is not an Iranian monopoly by any stretch of the imagination. But the point is that when we're looking at 10-year treasury yields up over 5%, and people are increasingly convinced that the Fed has lost control, the economic side of the house is a catastrophe. Then when you look at the military side, you have to look at the arsenal of missiles that Iran possesses. And they can reach out 1,200 miles with great precision, very high explosive conventional warheads that would do enormous damage, destroying whole city blocks in places like Haifa, Tel Aviv, even Jerusalem, though I doubt they would attack Jerusalem. The bottom line is that we need to think this through, and everyone right now is emoting. There is no thinking anywhere, as far as I can tell. The only possible exception may be, amazingly enough, Mr. Erdogan in Turkey, who came out this morning and indicated he was willing to mediate the dispute between Israel and Hamas. Whether or not anyone in Washington or Israel is interested in talking, I don't know. But if we could sideline Turkey and keep Turkey out of the fight, that would ultimately help Israel enormously.
So what would happen to the United States if we followed Senator Graham's advice and just began bombing critical infrastructure in Iran? Like what would happen then?
Well, all of the bases that we have in Iraq and Syria, unfortunately, where we still have over 1,000 Americans, all of those would be targeted. And this time they would target them accurately, and this destruction would be wholesale. I would expect trouble here at home and in the United States because of the open border. Hezbollah has a very large operation in Mexico. There are no doubt many, many, many Hezbollah agents inside the United States. We can only begin to imagine the kind of trouble they could cause. The missile and space program in Iran is very, very advanced, as is their cyber warfare capability. All of these things would be brought to bear against us. But what's most important, I think, for Americans to understand is if we attack Iran on the basis of Hezbollah's alleged willingness to attack Israel if Israel invades Gaza, we will end up in a fight with Russia. Russia will not sit by quietly and watch Iran destroyed by the United States air and naval power in the region. And once Russia...
So war with Iran, Colonel Macgregor, and I did look it up, it is spelled right, Colonel Macgregor is saying will likely lead to war also with Russia. Meaning, like right now we're in war with Russia, but with the proxy. We're talking boots versus boots. Boots on the ground there versus our boots on the ground there. This is all for Israel. For a colonial settler project, we're willing to go to World War III for. I guess. All right, so let's listen to a little more, and then I'm going to get to some other receipts here, and then come back to this interview here.
Russia enters this, it becomes much more than just a local conflict, maybe more than just a regional war. We haven't thought this through. We need to do that. And I doubt seriously at that point that the Turks would be able to stay out. The Turks are Sunni Muslims. They are the de facto leaders of the Sunni Muslim world. They have the largest armed forces in the region. They are in close proximity to Israel. They could move forces south through Syria very rapidly. And I'm sure Bashar al-Assad, assuming he even survives the opening of this campaign, would not obstruct them.
So many questions, but just to back up one click, you described Iran's missile arsenal, but Iran is a country that's been the subject of very intense sanction regime from the United States.
I'm going to come back to that because I got another receipt on the sanctions, but let me go back a little bit here. I'm going to pose a question and let him say all of this again. I think it was somewhere right there. And the question I'm posing is this: are we looking at the beginning of World War III? We thought it was going to come by way of Ukraine, going through China, but because of this is more has sort of moved up in urgency ahead of Ukraine. This is the tipping point, because it also is very directly connected to the conditions that Israel is forcing upon the Palestinians. Let's say they were occupiers, but they didn't treat the Palestinians this way. What we have Arab countries talking about, Arab countries, including Arab countries that are allies to us, Jordan and Turkey, talking about sending in military force to stop this genocide of the Palestinians. Let's continue with the interview and listen to what he says here about, is this the beginning of World War III?
End up in a fight with Russia. Russia will not sit by quietly and watch Iran destroyed by the United States air and naval power in the region. And once Russia enters this, it becomes much more than just a local conflict, maybe more than just a regional war. We haven't thought this through. We need to do that. And I doubt seriously at that point that the Turks would be able to stay out. The Turks are Sunni Muslims. They are the de facto leaders of the Sunni Muslim world. They have
the Turks. Hezbollah, I think in an interview, Scott Ritter said they have 100,000 troops right there right now. Hezbollah. Then you have Turkey. Like this is why I'm telling you this could end up being where we're seeing militarily in a world war, at least a regional war. But it becomes a world war if Russia joins, like he's saying here, because then that draws it. Russia and United States is involved. And in another, I'm going to get to the other video with Scott Ritter. He says we can't win a war with Iran. So you understand what that means? That would mean losing a war with Iran would mean that Israel, the destruction and elimination of the state of Israel. And Israel is largely, if not the only reason, there's several other tentacles, but largely the reason for the hatred between the United States and Iran, because Iran doesn't recognize Israel. They think they're, occupiers. They shouldn't even be recognized as a state, and they think they shouldn't exist in Palestine as the state of Israel. And of course, that with United States being the closest ally, that puts you in conflict with that country. So let me actually pause here, and I do want to bring up a couple of things here. I'm going to start with this one first. So I'm going to switch this out, but I do want to answer the question. Here. Is this glitching out? No, there it goes. Do you want to answer the question? See what CBS News is recording about. What would it look like with war with Iran? And there's a graphic here I want to show you. Let me get it queued up before I put it up on the screen here. 1 second. All right. All right, so let me bring this down just momentarily because we want to see what would it look like. Let's look at the military force. This is Iran's military. So, regardless of what Janet Yellen has said in that interview, that the United States can afford to be in all these wars, we cannot. We can't be in these wars with the goal of winning. This is Iran's, I'm sorry, I said Iran. Why is it showing like that? I can't get that off. But it says Iran's military forces, 4,500,000 active personnel, 350,000 reserve personnel, 125 men within, I think that's like a particular age where they'll soon be able to be eligible. So just looking at that number there, that's just Iran. We're not talking about Hezbollah. We're not talking about Jordan. We're not talking about Turkey. This is a disaster for the United States, and it's all because they can't hold back this genocidal state of Israel. If Israel was literally just not slaughtering all these civilians over these decades, I don't mean just now, I mean over the decades, if they haven't been treating the people they're occupying this way, the likelihood of their total destruction would not be on the horizon. And right now, it looks like it could be. They don't want this fight. They absolutely do not want this fight with Iran. Let me bring up another video. I have a couple of here that I do want to show. Oh, okay, that's it. I just wanted to see where it ends. All right, so let's go to this video because I'm trying to see what order here. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I wanted to go to the Scott video. This is not it. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. This one right here. This one right here. So let's go here. Now, this is from Redacted. Scott Ritter went on Redacted 5 days ago or something like that. I don't see it right now. But let's analyze this part. He goes on Redacted, and we're gonna watch them talk about war with Iran. And the quote that you can see that this title says, "War with Iran would be suicide, and the U.S. will lose." This is Redacted with Clay Morris, and he has, like I said, he has Scott Ritter on. So let's listen here. Oops, let me turn this sound on.
President Xi Jinping threw his support behind Russian President Vladimir Putin and the security of the Russian state, military security for Russia. A congressional report out this morning warning that a war with Russia and China is on the horizon, and the U.S. should be prepared. Of course, we covered last night, U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee, Committee Chairman Mike McCall authorizing President Biden to use force in a war against Iran. The Biden regime has also discussed using military force if Lebanon-based Hezbollah attacks Israel with rockets. All of these things unfolding in a World War III watch right now. We figured we'd bring in former UN weapons inspector, former U.S. Marine Scott Ritter, whose analysis on geopolitics and everything going on with these strategic war rhetoric right now is so important. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I guess maybe we start with just a few minutes ago, Xi Jinping throwing security support behind Russia? And what does this mean with this new congressional report warning that Russia and China, a war with both of those countries simultaneously, is on the horizon?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what Xi Jinping has done. China and Russia, of course, have a relationship that's superior to any treaty relationship. It's a relationship without any boundaries. This is what they've been saying, but there's been some boundaries. I mean, China has been a little bit reticent about Russia's military incursion into Ukraine. It violates China's Westphalian principles of sovereignty and things of that nature. But I think China has been compelled to reassess its posture, not by Russia's actions, but by the collective West's actions. That China now recognizes that this struggle between Russia in Ukraine isn't about Russia against Ukraine. It's about Russia against the collective West, against NATO, against the United States. And then China has to evaluate the rhetoric and the actions that have been coming out of the United States, its European allies, its Asian allies, in regard to China, the strangulation of China that they're trying to do economically and geopolitically. And China, I think, has realized that the best way to protect China is to align China militarily, secure from a security standpoint, with the other nation that is lined up against the same enemy set that China's facing, and that's Russia. And this is a huge deal because it's not that China's military is going to be coming over the borders. I mean, I think you'll see some Chinese assistance from a material standpoint.
And I think I do want to insert this because there is a connection why they're talking about this part before they get to the Iran part. But you notice there's a lot less coverage in mainstream media, corporate media, I should say, not mainstream. Independent news is what's mainstream. Corporate media, they haven't been covering Iran. It's like they've moved off of, I'm sorry, not Iran. They haven't been covering Ukraine. And it's not like they've moved off of it, but they've clearly have put Ukraine at the children's table and moved Israel to the adult table. But let's let them make the point about China and Russia and connect it to Iran.
You'll see some of this. You'll see closer cooperation between Russia and China. It won't be a one-way street. Russia has some technology it can offer China that will be devastating.
Oh, another thing I wanted to mention. So again, I said this, I think I alluded to this earlier. So we're supposed to be getting in so we're going to get in a war with Russia, China, Iran, and if Jordan and Turkey gets, that's what we're doing now. And wait till he gets to how we're going to field that many people. There would have to be a very large uptick in military recruitment. And if you haven't heard, military recruitment is down now. So let's listen more of Scott.
Dating to America if China ever incorporates it. But more importantly, it's about the fact that Russia is no longer alone. That China now says we support what you're doing. We're on your side. We're on Team Putin when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to the world, the global position. This is bad news for those in the United States who are trying to resurrect Cold War fantasies of being able to wage and win two wars simultaneously. Back when I was in the Marine Corps, we actually had a posture of fighting 2.5 wars. The way the United States was configured militarily, we could fight a war in Europe using NATO and defeat the Soviet Union. At the same time, we could fight a major war in the Pacific, probably North Korea, and defeat the North Korean Chinese threat, and still have sufficient force to engage in a smaller war, say in the Middle East, where we would fight a holding action until we won one of the two major wars and diverted the resources in to win the half war. And we had the force.
So that's 2.5. He's saying at his time, it was a belief or understanding that we could do 2.5 wars. And he's counting the one that's NATO led supposedly as one of those wars. And then we could fight a full one or just ourselves, and then have some sort of other smaller sort of conflict somewhere else. But again, remember who the players I said, Russia, China. Now we're going to add, that's 2. And now we're going to add, and this is back in the day. We're going to see if he says if it's still 2.5 even now. This is back when he was in the Marines. So this is several decades ago. But let's listen.
Forces to do that. We trained to do it. We were ready to do it. And thank God we never had to do it, but I think we could have done it. Today, we went from 2.5 to 2 wars. Today, we're down to literally 1 war, and we can't even do 1 war. Let's be honest. If we went to war right now in Europe against Russia, we don't have sufficient military force to prevail. We can fight a war. We can't win a war. If we went to war,
is that ever the United States military industrial complex? Is that ever their goal to win? I think Julian Assange said that it's never the goal to win. It's just to launder the money. But let's listen to some more of what Scott says.
Went to war against China, we could fight a war, but we can't win it. And that's even if we bring the totality of our conventional strength into play. And now we're talking about doing it against both Russia and China. The costs that are going to be associated with this are phenomenal. First of all, it's going to require a massive expansion of our conventional military power. The United States Army just had a shortfall in recruiting. They are literally tens of thousands of personnel short of what their authorized manning strength is, which means instead of expanding the U.S. Army, they have to shrink it. They don't have enough men or women to fill the ranks. And so certain units, certain capabilities are being taken down to 0 because you don't have manpower to do this. And now Congress is talking about beefing up. With what? Are you going to go to a draft? Have you run that by the American people? Is it really smart for the United States?
How would that go? How would that go for Joe Biden to come out and to announce it's time to go into a wartime position? We're bringing back the draft. How many of you would be sending your 18 to, I don't know, what are they taking, up to 24? Is the usually range 25, something like that? How many of you who have kids in that range, or have brothers in that range, or sisters in that range, or a person, a family member, a friend in that range, in military range, what will be your reaction to them being drafted? Would that be something that would get you out into the streets protesting? I know that would get me. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. I love my audience. This is why I always look to when it gets to the numbers, I look to you to see if to the chat to see if anybody give me something I can put up here. And you did. Military age 18 to 25. There you go. So I know I have a son that falls into that age range, and that ain't happening, Katney. That ain't happening. That is not happening whatsoever. But let's continue here.
United States to talk about fighting a 2 war. Do we know what that means? It means that America has to leave our continental fortress, go across the oceans to fight a war over there in their backyard. In their backyard. That means we're taking Russia on, in a confrontation in Europe where Russia's logistics are literally right there next to them. They're supplying themselves from interior lines of communication. We will have to extend ourselves. We don't have sufficient logistical buildup in Europe anymore. It would cost billions to do that. That means we have to sustain from the United States with lengthy supply lines. It's literally suicidal. So this is insane. Biden's they're talking about potential conflict with Iran. We can't fight Iran. We don't have the forces to do that. We fought the Gulf War in 1991 by having friendly ports and airfields that we could bring our ships into and offload in an uncontested fashion and land and offload troops. How are we going to do that in a war with Iran? They're going to blow up every port, blow up every airfield. It means now we have to do a forcible entry into an Iranian port, Chabahar, Bandar Abbas. We don't have the force structure to do that. Iran has missiles that'll sink our ships before we get there. They're parking too.
I mean, really the analysis that we're all sort of listening to and that we're all sort of been talking about, this is what a collapsing empire looks like. Spreading themselves way too thin because they still think they're in the prime of their empiring, of their imperialism, when they're not. And I mean, 4 or 5 wars? Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing, really? Let's continue.
2 aircraft carrier battle groups off the coast of Lebanon with a 2,000 man amphibious ready group to fight Hezbollah. Hezbollah is 100,000 men, highly trained, dug in to the hills of southern Lebanon, who've been preparing for this fight. We have gone insane. Let me just make it very clear.
Hezbollah, which I believe is it Lebanon? Yeah, which is they're part of Lebanon. The UN does not classify Hezbollah nor Hamas as a terrorist group. That is solely classification by the United States and Western allies. Hezbollah has 100,000 troops that's ready to come in from the north into Israel. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is literally would be all she wrote. And it's because this is Zionism causing its own destruction, because Zionism I'm not going to say has become, it's always been this way, is so brutal and inhumane. There's plenty places that is being occupied, that is part of a territory or colonized, but they're not constantly murdering civilians and babies. Like, I don't see what the end game is here. And I think that's the reason why there's a pause in them going into Gaza. Not I think, but there is a pause in them going into Gaza, because the United States, I think, can kind of see this. Like, this is not going to end well here. Israel, maybe you should rethink this. You need to have clear goals here. You keep hearing that in mainstream media. You want to hear clear goals, or the United States keeps saying we need to hear clear goals for what is achievable for for Israel. This is not looking good here, but let's continue with Scott.
America can't fight and win a war anywhere in the world right now against any power that has any military capability. We're that weak. We are literally that weak.
We can't even stop people coming across our own southern border to the tune of 10 to 15,000 people per day. So we can really extend ourselves going all the way to China or Iran, and turning, of course, former allies, I suppose, in Saudi Arabia against us as well. The Biden administration getting the cold shoulder from Saudi Arabia. But the Biden administration seems keen on raising another $100 billion for the war in Ukraine and to funnel money into Israel. Over the past 24 hours, Zelensky on the Ukrainian side has said, see all of these.
They go into some other items here, so I'm going to bring up my other receipt. Now, I do want to kind of look at this one here. Oops. Why when I click it, it closed to something else? But hang on a second here. Let me click the right one. There we go. This is I'm sorry. This is the one I just showed you. I showed you the graphic already. Now, what I do want to go to is kind of like the backstory. What the backstory with the United States and Iran, and then swing it back around to the interview with Tucker Carlson here. Now, if you remember not too long ago when Donald Trump was in office, he was the one that killed one of the generals in Iran. or of Iran, I should say. And let's listen let's watch this, a couple of videos on that to kind of give why this is the reason for some of the most recent uptick in tension.
The strike killing Soleimani was a major escalation.
This is one of the latest major escalations between the hatred between the United States and Iran. So let's
in the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign on Iran up until now.
Let me rewind it so you get the full part of what she said in the beginning here.
The strike killing Soleimani was a major escalation in the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign on Iran up until now. That campaign largely relied on crippling economic sanctions. So how do we get from economic pressure to military might? Dasha Burns takes us back a few weeks to explain.
Tensions with Iran have reached a fever pitch. The last week has seen a series of escalating events that has brought us to where we are today. So let's check the timeline and mark the major moments, starting with Friday, December 27th, when a U.S. contractor is killed and other service members are wounded during a rocket attack on a military base in northern Iran.
Now, understand some of the videos I have is from a corporate entity. So it's going to have colorful adjectives and things like that. I'm more so showing you so you can see factual things like dates and things that actually factually you can just say was no description. But just to give you a heads up, they're going to have a lot of colorful, propaganda language. And understand, I listened to it and I know it's there. So just giving you a warning.
In Iraq. Then 2 days later, on December 29th, the U.S. carries out airstrikes aimed at Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, which U.S. officials blame for 11 recent attacks on U.S.-led coalition bases, including the one on December 27th. At least 25 militia fighters are killed in the strikes. Then on December 31st, New Year's Eve, thousands of pro-Iran protesters stormed the U.S. embassy in Baghdad to demonstrate against the airstrikes. They tried burning down entry gates, reaching as far as the reception area. Trump blames Iran for the break-in and says they will pay a very big price.
This will never, ever be a Benghazi.
The next day, Iraqi forces, along with U.S. Marines, worked together to secure the area and disperse the protest. There are no reports of casualties, but Defense Secretary Mark Esper orders over 700 troops to deploy to the area, with many more on standby. And that brings us to the biggest event of the week. On Thursday night, U.S. time, and early Friday morning in Iraq, General Qasem Soleimani, a high-profile Iranian general, is killed by a U.S. airstrike at Baghdad International Airport. Soleimani led the Quds Force under Iran's Revolutionary Guard, which is widely believed to support terrorist groups such as Hezbollah. The Pentagon says Soleimani organized...
Again, Hezbollah is not labeled a terrorist group, but anybody but the United States and West.
Attacks on U.S. coalition bases in Iraq over the last several months, including the December 27th rocket attack. Then this morning, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says there will be harsh retaliation. The U.S. State Department closes the embassy in Baghdad and tells Americans to leave Iraq immediately. And we learn that approximately 3,000 additional troops are being deployed to the Middle East.
President Trump's decision to remove Qasem Soleimani from the battlefield saved American lives. He was actively plotting in the region to take actions, a big action as he described it, that would have put dozens, if not hundreds of American lives at risk.
There are conflicting reactions in the region. Iraqis celebrate Soleimani's death in Baghdad, while protesters demonstrate against the U.S. in Tehran. Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress express concern over more potential violence and Trump's unilateral action.
This action may well have brought our nation closer to another endless war.
And as for the White House, here's what the president had to say in his first public appearance after the airstrike.
We took action last night to stop a war. We did not take action to start a war.
Killing generals don't start wars, I guess. Right? They're telling us killing generals. Is that what they said his position was? A general? That doesn't start wars. And there's another video, a couple other videos I want to show you too. Here is another one about the Soleimani, I guess my computer is
So
delayed.
right now,
I'm like, I thought I hit
thousands
that
of
already.
people are in Iran together as the body of slain General Qasem Soleimani makes its way through the streets.
Earlier, dozens of Iranian lawmakers chanted "Death to America" as they met in parliament.
Could you imagine? Nancy Pelosi and I don't know, Bernie Sanders and standing side by side with Republicans chanting. That would be a funny sight to see. But back to the video. Just had that flash over my mind when I was watching this.
Let's get now to CNN Fred Blinken. He has reported extensively on Iran and joins us now from Tehran. And Frederick, those chants are just a bit of the dramatic moment from that session. Also, we've now got this exclusive reporting from you on what the potential response will be from Iran.
Yeah, exactly, Victor. And, one of the things that we've heard pretty much from all levels of politics here in Iran and from the military as well is that Iran is going to retaliate. There will be a response and there will be revenge. We heard that from Iran's supreme leader, from Iran's president as well. So I spoke to the main military advisor of Iran's supreme leader, someone who's extremely high in the hierarchy and very close to the power center of this country. And I asked Hossein Degan, what exactly is the response going to be? And he said there will be a response that will be a military response, and it will be against military targets, but that Iran does not want a wider war with the United States. Let's listen in.
The response for sure will be military and against military sites. Let me tell you one thing. Our leadership has officially announced that we've never been seeking war and we will not be seeking war. It was America that has started the war. Therefore, they should accept appropriate reactions to their actions. The only thing that can end this period of war is for the Americans to receive a blow that is equal to the blow they've inflicted. Afterwards, they should not seek a new cycle.
I think we're going to stop there on that report. I do want to speed this up and get through some of these other receipts here. Now, I do want to cover one more thing before we get back to the Tucker Carlson video, and that's because the question we left it off with is sanctions. How is Iran able to do these things? How is Iran able to go to war with us if there's sanctions on them? So let's let Al Jazeera English tell us, do sanctions against Iran work? And again, this is corporate.
About
to
U.S.
understand their
sanctions on
framing.
Iran, because the U.S. president keeps piling them on.
Powerful sanctions will go into full effect.
But Iran isn't bowing.
دارن دشمنی میکنن بدانند این دشمنی اونها بی جواب بخواهد.
Now, according to this online tracker, America has more sanctions against Iran than it does on North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Libya combined. So what exactly are those sanctions? And more importantly, are they working? The big picture is this. The US and Iran are in a way at war.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
But they don't fight face to face. Instead, they antagonize each other. Iran gets involved in conflicts around the Middle East by backing armed groups and US rivals like Russia. And the US's main weapon? Sanctions. Now, the simple definition of a sanction is an official order taken against a country in order to make it obey international law. That could include bans on travel, transactions, or trade. And in Iran's case, it's all of those.
Any kind of exchange that directly or indirectly might benefit the Iranian government or any agency of it or any individual who may directly or indirectly be affiliated with it is prohibited under American law.
Now, we've read the U.S. Treasury's blacklist for Iran, and it is long. The big ones are a ban on Iran's biggest industry, which is oil, and a ban on any kind of financial transactions with Iran. Plus, its entire steel, mining, coal sectors, dozens of individual people and ministries in Iran's government, banks, insurance, construction companies, ships, and aircraft. There's even a ban on Persian carpets, one of Iran's biggest exports, and its pistachio industry. Now, the penalties for violating those sanctions are serious. The U.S. government can fine a person or company up to $1 million or hand down a 20-year jail sentence, even if they're not American.
Because the U.S. has such a strong dollar and so many transactions are conducted in dollars, it means that U.S. sanctions would affect any EU company doing business with Iran.
Between having sanctions on its main industries and being blocked from trading with other countries, Iran has become one of the most isolated economies in the world. So when did this sanctions war start? More than 40 years ago. The U.S. long supported Iran's monarch, the Shah, but in 1979, the Islamic Revolution swept cleric Ayatollah Khomeini to power. A group of Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. embassy and imprisoned its staff for over a year. That led to the very first round of sanctions on Iran, with the U.S. freezing billions of dollars in Iranian government assets. And it was just the beginning. Over the next
So this goes back to what, 1979, I believe she said. So this is long standing, and sort of the bad relationship went from good to bad around there, 1970s, late 1970s, and it's all because it went from a secular sort of Muslim state to a Islamic, a very theocratic sort of state. And then those people who came into power kicked all of the U.S. influence out and, removed itself. And of course, the U.S. didn't like this. So that was the beginning sort of stages. Now, let's get back to the interview with Tucker Carlson. Oops, here it goes. Tucker Carlson and Colonel Douglas Macgregor. I'm going to go back 10 seconds so he can say the question again about sanctions.
Regional war. We haven't thought this through. We need to do that. And I doubt seriously at that point that the Turks would be able to stay out. The Turks are Sunni Muslims. They are the de facto leaders of the Sunni Muslim world. They have the largest armed forces in the region. They are in close proximity to Israel. They could move forces south through Syria very rapidly. And I'm sure Bashar al-Assad, assuming he even survives the opening of this campaign, would not obstruct them.
So many questions, but just to back up one click, you described Iran's missile arsenal, but Iran is a country that's been the subject of a very intense sanction regime from the United States, increased by the last president, Donald Trump. But for a long time, how is Iran still such a powerful country militarily given those sanctions? It sounds like maybe they didn't work.
Oh, no, I think that's an important point, Tucker, and you're absolutely right. We place so much value on these sanctions and assume that they have this profound impact. Normally, sanctions harm the population in terms of lowering its standard of living, making life more difficult for the everyday citizen, but it doesn't fundamentally alter the policy or the goals and objectives of the government. And this is something that I don't think we understand. And the same thing is true for Hamas and Gaza. You want to go after Hamas. You want to destroy it. I think everyone with a sound mind is interested in the destruction of Hamas. But do you want to kill hundreds of thousands of people in order to get at Hamas? That's the question. We have the same problem in Iran. Our sanctions have not harmed the regime's ability to develop and build very, very complex and sophisticated missiles. These missiles are very accurate now. There are hundreds, if not thousands. And the long-range missiles, the 1,200-mile range theater ballistic missiles, are a very serious threat to us in the region and to Israel. And the sanctions have had no impact there. If anything, the Iranians have pulled together the best human capital in their country, the best engineers, the best thinkers, and put them to work primarily on missile technology and on cyber warfare. And that's where we stand right now. We have to expect the worst as a result if we strike Iran.
How is the U.S. military, do you think, having spent your life in it, leading troops in combat and at the Pentagon, positioned to respond to war with Iran right now? Are we in a strong position or not, in your view?
No, I don't think we're in a strong position. I think we're probably at the weakest point in our recent history.
Now, I'm sure I've seen Scott Ritter and Colonel Macgregor on the same podcast before, but these are two former military people saying essentially the same thing. The critique is not only are we not ready. I was trying to clean the dust off, but it turned the mic off. Not only are we not ready for war with Iran, but both of them give the critique that we are at our weakest point that they've seen in decades. Both of them make that assessment. So let's continue. Okay, this Tucker one right here. All right.
I think you've got to look at the realities of new weapon systems, new capabilities. The United States Navy, if it's going to preserve its capability at sea, is probably going to be compelled to operate somewheres north and west of Sicily. If it comes within closer range, then it falls into this envelope where the Iranians can strike it. And as I said before, we have to assume the Russians will come into this. Once you move into the Eastern Mediterranean, you are vulnerable to the Kinshal missiles and other missiles, cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles that the Russians have. This makes it very difficult to fly strikes in support of the Israeli Defense Force against Hezbollah, because now you're flying a very long distance. You deliver your ordnance, you have to land in Israel in order to refuel. Israel is going to operate under a hail, if not a rainstorm, of missiles and rockets, making it very, very dangerous to do so. So our naval power, while substantial, may not have the desired impact on the ground that we would like. And then finally, we have no real army anymore. The army is down to perhaps 450,000. How much of that is ready to fight is open to debate. Much of it is sitting in Eastern Europe right now. We don't have the means to rapidly ship a large force of 80 to 100,000 troops on the ground into the region, which means that we're reliant on special forces and right now 2,000 Marines and perhaps 2,000 special forces and special operations forces. That's not going to make much of a dent. And as we've seen quite recently within the last 24 hours or so, some of our special ops forces and Israeli special ops forces went into Gaza to reconnoiter, to plan for where they might want to go to free hostages and make an impact. And they were shot to pieces and took heavy losses, as I understand it. I think that's where we're headed. And I don't see that as a win for Israel in any way, shape, or form. And I certainly think it's very dangerous for us. You know, as I've tried to point out to a number of people, until Britain entered World War I, it was just another European war. Once Britain entered it, it became a global war. Well, once we are a co-belligerent, we enter this thing, it's going to be very difficult for Russia and Turkey not to also come into this fight against us, because they will not tolerate the sort of collective punishment that Israel plans for Gaza.
The U.S. military does have an awful lot of generals, however, as you pointed out, multiples of the number we had, the absolute number we had during World War II. And they're paid to think about this stuff. Why has it dawned on no one, apparently, who's spoken publicly anyway, that this could really harm our country gravely? Why is no one saying that?
Well, I'm sure there are people in the U.S. military who are aware, but let's be frank. Most of the people at the top of the military have never operated under artillery fire or rocket fire. They haven't seen direct fire combat. They haven't seen real war per se. Remember, we've had the luxury of sitting around forward operating bases and striking opponents that were armed with AK-47s and command detonated mines, an occasional mortar or rocket. Very, very low intensity combat. This is a high-end conventional war that we're looking at with the potential to go nuclear, which obviously I don't think we or the Russians want to happen, but we have the wild card in Israel. They do have a nuclear capability. We don't know what the tripwire is for them to employ such a weapon. At that point, of course, all bets are off, and I think most of the world would turn against Israel. Right now, they just have to worry about the Muslim world against them. It would certainly widen if they went that far. There are too many unknowns and uncertainties here. And, you know, everyone always assumes at the beginning of such a conflict, well, it'll be contained. We'll only have to fight these people, Hamas, maybe Hezbollah. It never works out that way. These things always last longer than everyone thinks. The resources required are much more profound than what we anticipated. And remember, we've already used up many of our war stocks in Ukraine, and we've left Ukraine in a state of ruins, places on life support, 500,000 dead. What are we going to do to Israel if we press ahead down this road? And it seems, listening to Secretary of State Blinken this morning, who more and more sounds like our commander-in-chief, that there is no room for negotiation, no room for mediation. Hamas must be destroyed. We must go into Gaza. If so, I think we're on this very dangerous road to Armageddon.
What is the objective of the IDF and of?
So I do want to bring up, man, we're kind of done here. I'm at the 13-minute mark. I can remember that 13-minute mark because I do want to bring up another receipt here. 13-minute mark. Maybe I'll look for it in the background. All right, so my bad, everybody. All right, so let's. Oh, here it goes. I had it in the right folder. I thought I scrolled up and I didn't see it. He alluded to Anthony Blinken. So I do want to show what Anthony Blinken said at the UN here. So let's insert Anthony Blinken right here.
It is no secret to anyone in this room or on this council that for years, Iran has supported Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other groups that continue to carry out attacks on Israel. Iranian leaders have routinely threatened to wipe Israel off the map. In recent weeks, Iran's proxies have repeatedly attacked U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria, whose mission is to prevent ISIS from renewing its rampage. So, let me say this before this council, and let me say what we've consistently said to Iranian officials through other channels. The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security swiftly and decisively. To all the members of this council, if you, like the United States, want to prevent this conflict from spreading, tell Iran, tell its proxies, in public, in private, through every means, do not open another front against Israel in this conflict. Do not attack Israel's partners.
So that's what Anthony Blinken said, and I'll get back to the interview there. 13-minute mark is what I have to remember. We were left off, but let's listen to what you heard Anthony Blinken, but they're bringing back some of the old neocons, and here is Joe Lieberman on Fox Business, and he's talking about this conflict, and this George Lieberman. Let me just let him
in Iran. It's time for the U.S. military to strike
unhinged. I guess they don't have enough unhinged current politicians. So they say, hey, let's go back to the good old days and get George Lieberman.
What I'm saying, in short, is that we can't let the commanders of all this death, anti-American action in the Middle East to feel like they're in some safe sanctuary in Iran. It's time for the U.S. military to strike IRGC facilities, missile factories, drone factories in Iran, and let them know that we know that the Iranians are behind this, and we're not going to let them get away with it anymore.
So just to be clear, you think that the U.S. should strike Iran right now?
I do, because none of this, Hamas would not be Hamas without Iran's support. They're a terrorist agent of Iran, which calls us still the great Satan, and Israel the little Satan. And the same is true of Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, all the rest. And they're getting away literally with murder, including murder of Americans. Unless we make them pay for this soon, now, they will kill some American military personnel in Iraq. And it's nothing new for them. This Iranian government has the blood of Americans on their hands through their terrorist proxies and directly going back decades. And it's time to just acknowledge the Islamic Republic of Iran is our enemy. You can't trust them. You can't assume that we're going to make them friends. You can't make deals with them. We have to hit them hard, or they will continue to cause death and destruction for us and our allies like Israel and our allies in the Arab world like Saudi Arabia.
Oh, that's just Joe Lieberman going unhinged for World War III. That's all. That's nothing else. All right, so let me. I am going to prep that, but I do want to go to something else here and show you another receipt here. I might get back to that interview with Tucker Carlson. We'll see. But let's continue down and tell this story of what's happening with the war with Iran. Now this is recent responding. So you saw Anthony Blinken talking about Hamas connection with Iran, and this is Iran responding to that. And then let's just start there.
Dorset Jabari joins us live from Tehran. Dorset, Iran is being accused of helping plan Hamas's surprise attack on Saturday. We've since heard from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, and it had some strong words. Talk us through it.
Yes, during his weekly press briefing, the spokesperson, Nasser Kanani, dismissed the allegations, and he said that the Palestinian people have the will, the capability, and the determination to defend themselves, and any allegations that are coming towards Iran are politically motivated, and they are aimed at diverting public opinion to justify any possible actions on Iran in the future. He also said if there were to be any actions taken against Iran when it comes to their the allegations that they had a possible role in planning and assisting the attacks that were carried out on Saturday and continue to this day in Palestine and Israel, that Iran will respond harshly, and that this is not something that is even remotely possible in the minds of the establishment here, that what happened in Palestine had to do with years of occupation and oppression, and that was the result of not only Israeli policy, but also what many here believe to be Western policies towards the Palestinian people.
Explain to our international audience the historical context of all of this, why Iran is in some ways a major player in this region.
Well, Iran, since the revolution of 1979, has really seen itself as a
1979, there goes that
Shia
number again.
minority in the Middle East. It is a Shia majority country. So there was a number of steps taken by the founder of the revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, to ensure that Iran's position maintains secure. One of them was to align itself with other resistance groups, not just Shia resistance groups like Hezbollah, but also like Hamas and Islamic Jihad, to ensure their own existence down the line. And the existence of Israel has always been a point of contention for Iran. They believe that they don't believe Israel has a right to exist as a nation, as a country, and they've never acknowledged that to be the case. They say Palestine is a country that has been oppressed. So there's a lot of different factors at play. At the core of it, of course, it's their own existence, Iran's own security and existence down the line in the Middle East, and the role that they have played. And they believe that the Palestinian issue has always been an important one for them, because it also not only serves the Palestinian people and the nation, but also their own purpose as well in terms of their own existence down the line. So there's been a lot of different groups and elements that Iran has aligned itself with to serve that purpose.
Appreciate you breaking it all down for us.
So Iran, or the revolution in Iran, there was two movements that they decided to connect themselves with. Both of them was apartheid movements, one in Israel or Palestine, because they don't recognize Israel, and the other in South Africa. So again, from the beginning, this has been the relationship. So when you're thinking, why does Iran hate the US and vice versa? This is from the jump. 1979, that's the year where it flipped from good to bad as far as the relationship. And then, just different events throughout history. Soleimani was one of the most recent ones of escalation. Now, this interview flips to another person, and let me wait for him to introduce his name, but I retweet him all the time.
For us, Dosa Jabari in Tehran, Mohammed Marandi, who is
Mohammed Marandi. We retweet him all the time. He's out of University of Tehran, tweets a lot about Iran, and we retweet him all the time.
He's a political analyst and a professor at the University of Tehran. He joins us from the Iranian capital. Thanks so much for being on the program. Explain to our international audience the relationship between Iran and Israel, and why Tehran is being accused of having, quote, tentacles all over this attack by Hamas.
Iran's support for the Palestinian people is linked to the revolution itself. During the revolution, there were two causes that the Iranians were very much focused on. One was supporting the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and the second was supporting the dispossessed Palestinian people across Palestine. And at that time, Western countries were supporting both the apartheid regime in South Africa and the Israeli regime.
Isn't that something?
Nelson Mandela, the ANC, and others were all terrorist organizations in Western capitals. So Iran's support for Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and other resistance groups is because they have a legitimate cause. They've been dispossessed, they've been colonized, they've been ethnically cleansed, and the people who are trapped in Gaza, in this ghetto, they have been dispossessed from their land across southern Palestine.
I guess I want to look at the broader context of this and what it means in terms of Hezbollah and Hamas, the Lebanese militant group, being involved in the broader implications regionally. Could we see this conflict now spilling out further in the region?
It is quite possible, because we are seeing the genocidal tendencies of the Israeli regime playing out as they indiscriminately bomb homes and murder women and children across Gaza. And Western media, they all are justifying it, because they've all been justifying the actions of the apartheid settler regime for decades. And as we speak, people are being massacred. Last night, they were being massacred. towers have been razed to the ground, and constantly Western media outlets have been trying to justify all this because they side with the Israeli regime. It is the responsibility of Iran and Iranians and people across the region and across the globe to stand up for the dispossessed and not to be fooled by these Western narratives. Hezbollah supports Hamas because they are victims. Hezbollah supports the Palestinian people because these are victims. And Hezbollah is much stronger than Hamas, by the way. It is not surrounded.
So I just want to, sir, I just want to interrupt
You
there for a
notice, you
moment.
notice,
Sorry, I'm just
you
getting
notice this
word
is a
that-
corporate organization. Al Jazeera English. They're better than most places. But again, you heard he was saying a bunch of stuff about Israel and apartheid. And you heard she started shuffling papers. Don't really want to hear this part. She wants to you just answer the questions I got. Stop inserting this U.S. empire stuff because we got bills to pay here from our owners and donors. So let's listen, or advertisers, not donors.
We've heard from the Iran Foreign Ministry, sorry, the information's just flowing in as I speak to you. The Iran Foreign Ministry has said any foolish Israeli action against Iran will be met with a devastating response. We're already facing a war between Gaza and Israel, and now we're getting threats like that. Your response?
Well, the Americans or American officials have been threatening Iran as well. And I think that the Americans know quite well that they've already bitten off more than they can chew in Ukraine, in East Asia with China. The United States and its allies are on the decline. They're not the powers that they were 30, 40 years ago. The Israeli regime is in no position to threaten Iran because the Israeli regime cannot even destroy the Palestinian people. But the United States, if it does something foolish, then it will be expelled from the region. The United States is very vulnerable. And the price of fuel will go through the roof. It will destroy the Western economies.
Okay.
And then you'll be seeing violence
Oh, we got to get out
across
here.
Europe and North America.
Sorry, we just have to cut it short there. We're running short.
They're always running short when you're telling a bunch of truths. You notice that? They always, oh, wait, we got to go. We're running out of time here. They always sort of lean on that. I think I've covered all of my receipts on YouTube. I want to make sure if I can able to close my YouTube tabs. I covered that. Yeah. This one, Fox News. Let's get their take on this. They're always unhinged. Let's see if it's anything different. This was 2 weeks ago. Iran has I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah's leader meeting with
8 hours
officials
ago.
from Hamas and the
That was an old
Palestinian
video.
Islamic
This is 8 hours
Jihad
ago.
earlier today, as the Israeli Air Force says it conducted airstrikes in the West Bank and Syria overnight. Joining me right now is Center for American Security co-chairman, Fox News contributor, and former national security advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. He is the author of War by Other Means, a general in the Trump White House. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg back with us. Lieutenant General, good to see you. Thanks very much. Give us your reaction
Always
to Trey's
selling
report.
books. They're always selling books.
Yeah, good morning, Maria, and thanks for having me. I think he's right on the spot. And what he's talking about primarily, let's look at Hamas and the Gaza Strip right now. I think what the Israelis are doing, which is smart, is they're actually preparing the battlefield for an invasion eventually into Gaza by ground troops, which is going to be really hard. And they're probably training up for it. There's a huge training facility in the southern desert in Israel called Zelim. It's about a 600 building facility. In fact, they call it mini Gaza. And that's where they're probably training up to go in. And they're using munitions right now like artillery and air to basically soften up the battlefield. And they're also looking at the same time trying to figure a way with Qatar or other nations how to get the hostages out. And there's still about 200 about 12 Americans, we believe, are still held hostage, and they're trying to get them released or at least moved to a more secure location before they go in. The Israelis are going to go in. There's no doubt about it. They're just preparing the battlefield correctly to do it.
Yeah.
And then when Trey made the comment, which was correct about the Hezbollah to the north, we're trying to keep we in the United States, with our pressure on Iran, is trying to keep Hezbollah out of this fight as well. And we have influence on Iran through force if necessary. And what we don't want Hezbollah to do, Maria, is actually open up a second front on Israel. Let the Israelis fight the fight with Hamas in the south, hold on to the north.
That's exactly what
and
they're
then
going to
we'll see
do.
where it goes.
And I guess that is up to Iran, right? I mean, this latest warning from Blinken is quite stunning. I mean, the Pentagon confirmed that U.S. troops in the Middle East have now been attacked 14 times. They're attacked by drones or rockets just in the last week. 24 people have been injured as a result. Troops in Iraq being targeted in 11 separate attacks, while U.S. forces in Syria have also been attacked 3 times. Pentagon officials said Monday that the attacks have Iran's fingerprints all over them. And then we hear from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on it. He issued a warning to Iran about this at the UN Security Council yesterday. Let's take a listen. Watch.
The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security swiftly and decisively.
General, your reaction?
Yeah, here's the mistake, Maria. The mistake is that should have been issued by the President of the United States. Look, I remember quite clearly when the President was at the State of the Union, and in the State of the Union, he said quite clearly, if you attack, not kill, if you attack an American, you forfeit your life. That came from the President. The President needs to make those comments. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the one who will release military forces if needed. And Iran everybody should understand, make it very clear to Iran, we know they've got their hands on Hezbollah and Hamas as well. And they need to understand, if Hezbollah enters this fight, you are culpable and we are going to come after you. But Blinken's
and they don't seem to be scared at all. I mean, that's actually what I think it's going to happen, especially when the images, or especially when it becomes clear that any incursion or any invasion into Gaza is just nothing but slaughtering, babies and kids. I mean, how are you going to avoid that? Because did we get to that part? Oh, we haven't gotten to that part in the Tucker Carlson, so I won't refer to it. But let's listen to a little more of this, and then we'll get back.
His comments were very good, but the wrong person issued the comments.
Yeah.
Those need to come from the White House. Those need to come from the President of the United States.
Yeah, you're
the
right.
Commander-in-Chief.
That is spot on. Do you think we could go to war with Iran?
Well, I don't think it would be. The answer is yes. We should be able to do it, and they should believe that, because they should fear us and they should respect us, not just say, well, we really don't believe they're going to do it.
Yeah.
We have enough combat capability in the Mediterranean to do something. In Iran, and the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, needs to understand, if you come after us, we're going to come after you. Look, Maria, over 30 Americans have been killed.
There have a lot of
and 12 are
attacks.
hostages.
There have been a lot of attacks on U.S. troops. Now, the U.S. is planning to send Iron Dome missile defense systems as F-16 fighter jets arrive in the region. Lieutenant General, your thoughts about this?
These people about to have us killed, man. This is insanity. But that is all. No, I'm not gonna do it. There is one more, but it's Ryan Graham and Sagar discussing it, and I haven't eaten today, so I don't want to mess up my appetite. So I'm not gonna play that one. So let's go back to Twitter and close out. Not close out, but finish up the interview with Tucker Carlson and Colonel Douglas Macgregor. Now, they do get into some border stuff. So I may have to fast forward a little bit. Yeah, they do get into some border stuff. So let me go 13-minute mark, I believe.
Cruise missiles and hyper at the top of the military. Sounds like our commander-in-chief.
Okay, so we're here.
That there is no room for negotiation, no room for mediation. Hamas must be destroyed. We must go into Gaza. If so, I think we're on this very dangerous road to Armageddon.
What is the objective of the IDF and of Blinken, of the United States and Israel in this short term? Destroy Hamas, but what does that mean?
Well, to destroy Hamas in the minds, I think, of policymakers in Washington as well as in Israel is to systematically root them out and kill them in Gaza. Now, let's be frank, when you go into an urban environment, you can't pick or choose your targets very easily. First of all, no matter how well trained you are, you're moving into an area that is rubbled. There are ruins. It's very difficult to negotiate in that. When I say negotiate, I mean negotiate the terrain through the rubble. You don't know where the enemy's going to pop up. Once you destroy all these buildings, he can be anywhere. So you're going to take losses going in. But more important, once you start going in there, you're going to end up killing whatever you find. Because the soldier, the Israeli soldier, the American soldier, very much the same, they want to live. They want to survive. When in doubt, pull the trigger. They're not going to stop and say, now, wait a minute, before I shoot, I really need to think about this because that may be a civilian or they're.
And that is a reason Iran will enter this conflict and make it a regional conflict. Because when the images, and you just heard him, and this is what I was going to refer to, but I forgot I hadn't gotten to this part in the interview. He said an Israeli and a United States soldier. He didn't say a soldier. He said an Israeli and a United States soldier, possibly because they get the same training. They're gonna shoot first and ask questions later. They're not gonna decipher, oh, is this a civilian? They see somebody in puberty who looks, a 13-year-old, and my oldest daughter looked a lot older than she was. I mean, it's typical for a lot of girls. But let's say, so you're just shooting anybody who looks of age? Is the point that I'm making? So when these images start to come out of the slaughtering of civilians, that's when the Arab world is going to activate. The Jordans, the Turkeys, the Irans, the Hezbollah. So let's continue with as much. I'm not going to get through all of this, but I will get through as much as I can here. Let's go.
Or there may be a family there. That's not going to happen. You can't expect that. So the notion that this is a kind of warfare that is so precise that it can avoid so-called collateral damage is just nonsense. We can't expect miracles from the IDF or our own troops, which means that you're going to annihilate everything in Gaza. And remember, the Israelis would like to push the population out. The problem is when you push the population out, if you did into Egypt, you're going to run into trouble with the Egyptians. But even if you manage to get them there, you're only moving the problem that confronts you 20 miles, 30 miles away. In other words, killing people isn't going to solve the problem.
Killing people isn't going to solve the problem. And I think I'll stop the interview there. Like I said, they go, or maybe I did I mention they go into border stuff for a period, so I don't want to get into that part, but I did want to add this here because it's a connected topic, and that is NATO's governments are going ballistic and asking the Secretary of General to resign because of this statement that he makes here. So let's play it. They're asking the Secretary General to resign because of this viral sort of video. It's a longer version. Maybe I'll find it and play it, but let's listen to this part. It's 40 seconds long.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum.
I'm letting it replay.
The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Now, that collective punishment part really rubbed Israel the wrong way. And there's some other breaking news that I'll show in just a second. But I do want to show, did I have a video set up for? Oh, wow. Fox News puts out a lot of videos. But what I do want to show you is Fox News reaction to this video I just played. But actually, yeah, I'll do that. And I got time to do both. Okay, because we have a new speaker. There is a speaker that has been elected. Now let's see. Let's see the reaction at Fox News, and they're echoing Israel's take on this. So, but it's a quick video. Let's play it. This is Fox News reaction, or reporting on this same event of the UN Secretary General and his statement. Let's listen.
As we reported just a moment ago, here is the sound. It is 2 bites back to back. First up is the sound of the Secretary General that is now being slammed by the Israeli ambassador, where the Secretary General is now, the ambassador is calling for his resignation after he appears to justify the surprise attack by Hamas on October 7th. Let's listen here back to back.
Appear to justify.
It is important to also recognize
Same video I
the
played.
attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing.
Mr. Secretary General,
This is the Israeli representative talking now.
Definitely, this is not our world. Saturday, October 7, will go down in history as nothing less than a brutal massacre. Saturday, October 7, is a wake-up call for the entire free world, a wake-up call against extremism and terror.
Well, this is quite a remarkable moment and development. Now live from the United Nations, Eric Shawn is with us. To quote the Secretary General, it is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum, with the Israeli ambassador to the UN then calling for him to now resign for those remarks, Eric.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Sandra. It is a stunning diplomatic breaking news here at the United Nations, with Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan calling on Secretary Guterres to resign because of his remarks. Some here taking his remarks as justifying the terrorism, blaming the savage, barbaric savagery and murder by the terrorists of Hamas on the directly on the Israeli occupation. This is not the first time that the
Now understand that the UN does not recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. So they're saying that, but they don't recognize them that way. Now, let's play this Mike Johnson becomes the new speaker. I believe this is
clearly this is a very, very huge moment in the history of the House.
I believe this is a election denier who has been elected, and he's against Ukraine
clearly
funding.
This is a very, very huge moment in the history of the House of Representatives. A new Speaker of the House appears to have been elected, unless some members decide to change their minds, John. The Republicans clearly, in this particular case, got their act together.
And out of 3 weeks of chaos comes very important history. A man even many Republican senators knew nothing about this morning, and I would believe most Americans knew nothing about this morning. He's about to be third in line to the presidency once he is sworn in as Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson will be third in line to the presidency of the United States after the president and the vice president. He will now be the leader of a very fractious Republican conference. And we were talking earlier, the Democrats believe they can use him and Trump to run the 2024 campaign. That will be a challenge. There's a huge difference between him and the Democrats, but we're going to see the president in the Rose Garden in a few minutes. He's never negotiated with Joe Biden. He's going to have to now negotiate with the president of the United States. He's also never negotiated with Mitch McConnell. This will also exacerbate, because of the wing of the party he comes from, the differences we have seen play out in the last couple of years between House Republicans and Senate Republicans. So it's a new face. It's a new leader. He's a blank slate. That is an enormous opportunity. The challenges are so many for a person who has zero experience at this level. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but he has zero experience at what he inherits in just a matter of minutes. They'll tally the votes. He'll be sworn in as Speaker. He will get the gavel. And then, wow, we move into a next very big chapter.
Hakeem Jeffries is about to introduce the next Speaker of the House, Representative Mike Johnson, who has just been elected. Let's listen to him.
From the great state of Louisiana and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Crazy. New Speaker Mike Johnson.
Thank you.
I heard on Morning Joe that he is against Ukraine funding. I heard this morning on Morning Joe.
Thank you.
Let's see if he has a speech here.
Thank you all. First, a few words of gratitude. I want to thank Leader Jeffries. I do look forward to working with you on behalf of the American people. I know we see things from very different points of view, but I know that in your heart you love and care about this country and you want to do what's right. And so we're going to find common ground there. All right. I want to express my great thanks for our Speaker Emeritus, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin has dedicated over 2 decades of his life to selfless public service, 16 of those years in this House. And you would be hard pressed to find
I'll listen to a little
anybody
more
who
and then
loves
we'll move from
this
this.
institution more or has contributed more to it. He is the reason we're in this majority today. His impact can never be overstated, and I want to thank him for his leadership, his friendship, and the selfless sacrifice that you and Judy have made for so many years. You helped build it, Kevin, and we owe you a great debt of gratitude. I want to thank the dedicated and overworked staff of this beleaguered House. They accept praise so stoically. But Miss Susan Cole, our House reading clerk, and yes. Listen, all the clerks and all the staff, you know, they're terribly overworked. This has been a grueling process. but they have served an integral role in keeping our republic, and we thank them for that service. I know we all do. I want to thank my dedicated wife of almost 25 years, Kelly. She's not here. We couldn't get a flight in time. This happened sort of suddenly.
All right, so I think I
But
cut
we're
it
going to
here.
celebrate.
Just
Soon.
wanted
She
to
spent the
get
last,
give him a
couple of weeks
chance
on her knees in prayer to the Lord.
say some
And,
words or
she's
whatever.
a little worn out.
I think we can pause it. I'm gonna round up and get up out of here in just a second here. Let me see if there's any other commentary. There is not. They just play a speech. So let's end with this, and it's still on topic. So we're still on the new speaker, but let's listen before he gets elected. Let's listen to what Morning Joe was talking about this morning about him. Now they're going to go from one subject to the other into the subject here.
Longer is true in foreign capitals because of the behavior of a handful of Republicans in the House of Representatives who have taken our constitutional government, turned it
right here. This is where I went.
And they go, man, I don't know that we can count on America anymore. And the Republicans know this is happening. And as Willie said yesterday, so 5 or 6 people don't mind that the American reputation is being tarnished across the globe. Again, according to Chairman McCall and other Republicans.
I don't want to stop the video, so I just want, because I want to get out of here. They're talking about it before it happening. So you can see the caption here: House remains without a speaker amid Israel-Hamas war. It should say Israel-Gaza massacre. And this is, and then they're going to talk about it in general. They got to lay out how this makes them look bad, and then they go into talking about Mike Johnson. So let's turn the volume back up and let's get back into this clip here.
What America would do, because we're fairly predictive in what we would do to defend liberty all over the world on behalf of our allies and against our foes. That no longer is true in foreign capitals because of the behavior of a handful of Republicans in the House of Representatives who have taken our constitutional government, turned it upside down to the point where we are in business, apparently, according to the Republicans, not to govern. We're in business to go send people to Washington to destroy the efficiency of government. And that's where we are today.
So, Charlie, there's actually a connection of what we've been talking about earlier in the show with Mark Meadows and Jenna Ellis, which is that it appears these members of the Republican House caucus are rooting out anyone, C. Emmer, who was nominated and then quickly stepped away.
So if you didn't hear, Tom Emmer was nominated yesterday. 3 hours after being nominated, he stepped down when he couldn't get past a certain amount because Donald Trump said he didn't like him. Donald Trump de-endorsed him or was against him, and he didn't win. And they reported that, yes, Donald Trump had a hand in him not winning this election. It was off of MSNBC. I played the clip yesterday, so let's listen.
Because he dared not support those lawsuits challenging the election results. Now, he did sign on to one in Texas, so he's not totally clean on this, but anybody, and they're proudly talking behind the scenes to Trump's people saying, I stood up for you in the caucus room, I stood up for you, we're getting rid of anybody who does not support you. Donald Trump hangs over this process entirely.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, the Republicans are now in this, doom loop of crazy and absurdity, deep dive, into the backbenches to come up with somebody who would be acceptable, acceptable in a party that has been, enabling and empowering the legislative terrorists for years. I mean, this has been a long time coming. But you're absolutely right. What you saw yesterday was Donald Trump facing all of the legal problems that he is facing, reasserted himself as the apex predator of the Republican Party. He doesn't have the clout to get somebody like Jim Jordan elected as Speaker, but he certainly has the clout that he can destroy anyone who has taken a stand against him on the big lie. And so what you are seeing is, in fact, the support for the big lie, support for overturning the 2020 election has now become, not just a litmus test. It has become a life or death requirement in the Republican Party because Donald Trump has made it clear that if you did not sign on.
So let me read this. Donald Trump puts out, I have many I have many wonderful friends from wanting to be Speaker of the House, and some are truly great warriors. Rhino Tom Emmer, who I do not know well, is not one of them. So you see that there. You see where was against the
to what he attempted to do on
Tom
January
Emmer.
6th, that he will kneecap you. He will take you out. He's sitting in court. I mean, think about his day yesterday. He's sitting in court hearing, testimony about how he, all the fraud he engaged in. He hears that Jenna Ellis has flipped the story of Mark Meadow getting immunity. And yet what does he do? He basically says, I am still in charge of the Republican Party. I can extend this chaos and I can set the standard for the future of this party. It's kind of a remarkable 24 hours.
And he called yesterday in a post, Congressman Emmer, a quote, globalist rhino, because he did not support the attempted coup in the 2020 election. So, Julie Sirkin, this brings us to you today. You've been covering this somehow for the last 3 weeks, trying to figure out who is going to be the choice. For the moment, it's
now we get
Johnson
to
of Louisiana.
Johnson.
Who's next on the world's most boring reality show?
Well, we've
You
had
mean Morning
Groundhog
Joe?
Day never ending for the last 22 days, but today could be different. And it's not because some of the hard right conservatives, these flamethrowers, are necessarily worried about the two global wars or the impending government shutdown deadline around the corner. This could potentially work out for Mike Johnson, the four-term Louisiana congressman, because these hard right conservatives are worried that moderate Republicans are going to get fed up with this entire process and start working across the aisle with Democrats to at least temporarily empower the Speaker pro tem, Patrick McHenry. This could really be some of these hard right conservatives' last-ditch effort to get somebody in the Speaker's chair that they could potentially swallow. And Mike Johnson was one of the chief architects, as you know, of that 2020 election overturn effort in the Capitol. And it's why, for so many reasons, he has the support not only of former President Trump, but also he could potentially unite the wide swath of opinions in the conference. He's not necessarily a loud flamethrower like Jim Jordan was. He operates quietly. He's even been seeking this bid, I'm told, quietly this whole time for the past few weeks. But he didn't officially enter until he saw the writing on the wall, of course, for Emmer and some of the others. And potentially at 12 o'clock today, while we're skipping these secret ballots behind closed doors, Johnson apparently feels confident enough that he could go to the floor as a current member of leadership, the last current member of leadership that could potentially get the gavel and get the 217 votes needed on the floor. Now, it won't be easy for him. Obviously, he has an uphill battle here. But as I said, this could really be the last effort, the last time that some of the hard right, including those who ousted Kevin McCarthy from the Speaker's chair,
So he is
could
an
actually
election
get their
denier.
guy or somebody that they could be okay with in the Speaker's chair, because Johnson doesn't support Ukraine aid. He's been skeptical of it in the past. He's going to have to enter the room right away if he wins the gavel with McConnell, with Jeffries, with Schumer, to try and hammer out the next government funding
That
deadline.
doesn't
But
make
he's
them
really
happy.
somebody who could be the voice for some of these hard right conservatives.
Well, but Charlie, if he doesn't support Ukraine funding, he's lost Chairman McCall and a hell of a lot of other Republicans.
No, he hasn't, Joe.
If he was at the forefront of the January 6th election denying scheme in the
Which
House
he
of
was.
Representatives, then he certainly has lost Ken Buck from Colorado.
Has he?
And a handful of other members.
We'll find out.
So they're not going to get there. At
He
what
won.
point? At what point do Republicans?
Joe, somebody delivered the news to Joe that he got there. He got there, Joe. And that election denier, where else they said, the January 6th or whatever other title they gave him, he won that speaker's race, and he is now the Speaker of the House. So that's going to be it for me. I'm going to be reading Super Chats next. We'll be reading Super Chats next. But before I read Super Chats, let me show you this here. This one. Vote blue no matter who is for morons. Here is one of our hoodies. Vote blue no matter who is for morons. We have a ton of them, a ton of different designs, or 11. Maybe I shouldn't say a ton. You can get it in different colors. There's green, There's yellow. You can get it in white. You can get it in, is that a powder blue? I like the green or the yellow. So you can check it out. If you go to our website, and I'll put our website there at the bottom. Right. Not there. There's our website. Go to our website, click on RBN merch. It takes you to our RBN store, which contains 11 graphics. Those 11 graphics can be on a mug, can be on a tote bag, can be on a t-shirt, a tank, a sweatshirt, a long sleeve V-neck shirt, and a hoodie. I think those are the options you have. So check that out on our website. The other thing is join our Substack. Our Substack is where you get notifications when we go live, and also when we send clips. This is the merch store that I was mentioning. Those are the mugs. Same graphics. You can get them on tote bags. Same 11 graphics, or you can get them on a hoodie. Always like showing the hoodies. Here is the signature RBN hoodie. You can get it in green. You can get it in the red. I think I would get it in that color if I ever get it. But that's going to be it, everybody. I'm going to be packing up now. I'm going to head out. Clean up a little bit before I got to pick up my daughter from preschool. But again, this is the reason why I do go through my feed towards the end of the show, is so I can find breaking news. And I found that story of the House Speaker I was able to include in this stream. I don't see any other sort of stories showing. Again, I'm going to be on tomorrow, going to be on the Lee Camp show. So how about we end with a Lee Camp video? And here is Lee Camp, and I'm going to, actually, let me go ahead and read Super Chat. I think I got one or two new Super Chats I can read before I head out here. Yeah, here we go. YouTube blocking relevant comments using Rumble now. Thank you for the Super Chat, Freddie the Fish, and we do have a Rumble connection. I'll check Rumble to see if there's any Rumble rants. A Biden 71 always showing some love. And let me see if there's any Rumble rants that I should need to report. Yeah. Rumble rants. I don't see any Rumble rants. Okay, so good. All right. That's going to be it. Like I said, we're gonna end with this video from Lee Camp. I'll be on the Lee Camp show tomorrow. What time did he say? 12:30 my time. That's 3:30 Eastern. So, and Patreon is the best way to support RBN, and I have it scrolling at the bottom if you want to join. Thank you for watching. I'm going to put myself in the background, and you can watch this video. I shall see you. I think I'm off tomorrow. You can watch me on the Lee Camp show, though. And then you'll see me back here on Friday for the Nick and CJ show.
This is the neoliberal Huffington Post saying that there's a bit of a mutiny brewing inside the State Department over Israel-Palestine policy. I brought you the story of one man who was quitting his job, publicly resigned from his job because he could no longer be a part of weapons shipments to this massacre. But apparently he's not the only one. So there are others standing up, and they say morale is low. Staffers, some of them are just voicing complaints. Some of them are quitting. But to me, this is a big deal. I know to you and me and all of us who have understood this stuff for so long, we're like, well, of course. Why did you sign up to work with war criminals? But for them, it's surprising that it's getting to this step, that even the people who signed up to be war criminals for the American empire are like, a little bit too much.
Well, and I think, to quote Malcolm X, there was a time when you didn't know what you know now. And I think that it's important that people have these revelation, and maybe revelation is a bit too strong of a word, but these shifts, right? I was recently just speaking to both Matthew Ho and John Kiriakou. Matthew Ho did 3 tours with the U.S. Marines. He was a Marine Corps captain and also worked for the State Department in Afghanistan. John Kiriakou worked for the CIA and went on to blow the whistle on the CIA torture program.
And Matthew Ho left and became a objector.
Right, a very strong,
and
is like an incredibly strong voice inside the peace movement. We need these people, and these people are oftentimes starting or continuing careers inside the machine, inside the system. And these people will then be able to inspire others to do the same. I'm also thinking of Mike Preisner, who has a podcast called Eyes Left, and has also said many times that he's made himself available to other folks that are in the military and want to talk about these conflicted feelings that they have. Because I get it. I can't talk about it. Lee can't talk about it because we've never been in the military. So we can't speak to what that feels like. You need these people to be able to reach out to people who know what that feels like, right? So I think that these things are super important, and I hope that somebody reads this article that's working in the State Department or the whatever department, the Department of Justice, what I don't know, and reads this and goes, "Oh, I'm not alone."
Yeah.
Like there are other people that have these thoughts that can't talk about it out loud at work. That's really important. This is how those dominoes fall, and so I think. Yeah, this isn't like, oh yeah, the revolution. No, but it's like these shifts in paradigm are super important, particularly when they happen at the levels of the State Department.
Well said.